Our food is killing us and it's killing the environment.
Welcome.
Dr. Hyman, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time. How long are you out in LA for?
About 5 days.
Got it. And when you come, is it just constant stuff going on?
Yeah, I'm launching my new cookbook, Food, What the Heck Should I Cook? It's super fun. I'm speaking at an event on regenerative agriculture in Malibu on Sunday, Kiss the Ground.
Wow.
Having fun with friends.
Yeah.
So you're lots of yoga.
I bet. Taking
it's my way to stay sane on the road. Just get to a hot yoga class and I'm good.
Yeah, we got plenty of those in LA. And you're full-time in Cleveland, right?
No, I'm full-time nowhere.
Okay, that's good. That's a good way to live.
I'm full-time nowhere. But I run a center in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic called the Center for Functional Medicine. I'm there a week a month. And I have a center in Lenox, Massachusetts, the Ultra Wellness Center, where I have a big practice seeing patients who are chronically ill with treating them with functional medicine. I have an apartment in New York. I do my podcast, and I travel and do fun stuff whenever I can.
That's so good. You're just the epitome of like the 2019, you can be flexible with your work. You got a podcast. You got it figured out, I think.
Yeah, writing books, keep me off the streets and out of trouble.
I guess so. So I want to understand a little bit of like how you even become this icon. I mean, I literally, we were just talking about how we even got here in the room. And it was because really I just kept hearing your name all over the place, right? From your book, from my family in Ohio, from all these different people. You're the guy, right? You're the best at this stuff is how it was coming across to me. So I said, we got to get in touch with this guy and have a chat. But how do you even become, like, why did you focus on this segment? How do you become this guy?
It's easy to connect the dots looking back.
Yeah.
Sometimes looking forward, you can't always see where you're going.
Yeah.
And as I look back, I mean, none of this was planned.
Yeah.
And it wasn't intentional. It was sort of a consequence of following my heart, following my dream, and showing up for my life the best I could. And the truth is, how I got into this form of medicine was because I was really sick.
Really?
And after I graduated from medical school, I worked in Idaho for 4 years as a family doctor, delivering babies, running the ER in a small town on a Native American reservation in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. And then I went to China for a year to develop medical clinics because I speak Chinese. I studied Chinese in college.
Wow.
And Asian studies and religions and all that. And I got mercury poisoning when I got back. And I worked in the ER for a few years, but got deathly ill. My entire system broke down. I developed what they call chronic fatigue syndrome, but my gut wasn't working, my brain wasn't working, I couldn't sleep, my muscles were severely damaged and breaking down. I had, all kinds of immune issues and rashes. I couldn't eat anything. I literally was about to go on disability. And
at what age?
I was 36.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. And I had a family, I had 2 kids. I was really struggling. And I worked at a place called Canyon Ranch after the emergency room. Before I got sick, I got the job. And literally within 3 months of getting the job, I got sick. And there was a nutritionist there named Kathy Swift who introduced me to this guy, Jeffrey Bland, who's the father of functional medicine. And I heard him speak, and I'm like, well, this guy's either a genius or he's, a charlatan.
Yeah.
And I better figure out which one.
Yep.
And what he's saying made so much sense about how the body actually is organized and designed. And it was so different from when I learned in medical school, which is the body's one system. It's not a bunch of different organ parts, not a bunch of different specialties.
Yeah.
The treatment for most disease isn't medication. It's figuring out how to optimize these basic body systems, these functional systems. Yep. And mine were all broken. And it turned out I had mercury poisoning. I had to detoxify from the mercury. I had to fix my gut. I had to regulate my immune system. I had to optimize my nutrition. And through understanding this model on my own body, through my own testing and discovery, because there was no real experts back then. There were a couple of people, and I went to them, and they helped me and they guided me. But there was like a couple.
Yeah.
Now we've trained 15,000 doctors and
everyone has some nutrition advice now.
Yeah, and so I mean, one of the fundamental strategies is using food as medicine, and food as information, not just calories. But I had far more than that, and through that I started to try it on my patients and see them get better, and I just realized that this was the solution to so many people suffering. Yeah. I mean, I'm selling my mother's house. She died a few years ago, and I get a call from the lawyer who I reached out to this real estate lawyer who I knew, and he put me in touch with someone in his firm to do the closing for the house. And so I'm on the phone with him this morning, and I'm like, great, whatever he's asking me. He says, and by the way, I just want to remind you, you saw my daughter many years ago. I'm like, oh, I did? Oh, yeah, what was wrong? She said, well, she had all this horrible skin condition, eczema, and she was seeing all the doctors, no one could help her.
Yeah.
And you treated her, and she was like, fine. And she's been fine ever since. And I'm like,
And you had no idea.
Well, he knew.
It was him.
I didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
Because I see so many people. It was like 15 years ago.
That's incredible.
And so, what I realized is this is the new model of healthcare for everything.
Yeah.
And of course, we still need surgery, we still need medications and so forth. But for most of the chronic problems, we're seeing 60% of Americans have a chronic illness, 40% have 2 or more.
Yeah.
And what we're doing doesn't work that well. So this model really helps. And so I started to learn it and apply it. And then I'm like, the world needs to know about this. And so I wanted to share about it. So I started, wanting to write a book.
Yeah.
So I wrote my first book, wrote my next book. The internet happened, the websites happened, and I was doing video blogs in 2006,
Wow.
2007, and nobody was doing that. I had, a podcast back then. No one was doing that.
Especially in your field, right?
No.
Like
but I just became an evangelist because I saw so much suffering, and it was so unnecessary, and people were struggling so hard with problems that had answers if we used a different set of lenses and ways of thinking about it. So, and then I just kept writing about it and teaching and talking, and it was like a mission. I was driven to share about it. And then, the rest just happened. I started writing more books and doing more talks and being on TV. And it wasn't like I was chasing that. It just happened as a consequence of me becoming an expert, because I had to, because I was dying and I didn't want to die, and discovering it for myself. And then using it on my patients, I just saw, wow, the world needs this.
Yeah. What a testament, too, to having an idea you really believe in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because even if you transfer, I interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and it seems like there's a big through line between people that are just kind of hunting for maybe a quick buck or, I heard this is a good business opportunity, so I jumped in. And you just see the difference in those people that really believe in what they're doing fundamentally.
Completely different. I mean, I knew this doctor once, and, she wanted me to introduce her to my agent. And so I did. And he said to me, this was the weirdest conversation I ever had. All she wanted to know was what book she had to write to get a bestseller in a big advance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's very strange because, that was not what I thought. I was like, I want to share this story with the world. It needs this story. And it needs to be out there so people can take advantage of it and not suffer so much from all the chronic things that we all suffer from.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm so envious. I mean, I love what I do also, but I'm so envious of anyone. It really seems like you have pursued something that you were so passionate about, and the success kind of came around that. You know what I mean?
I think that's really true. I think if you, do what your heart tells you, do what you love, do what you are good at, and the rest will follow. I mean, if you set out to be a success, you'll be a failure because unless it's driven from a true, authentic, honest way of being that's not ego driven. It's really about service. Then it's going to be tough. I mean, there are people who are successful who are sharks and doing bad stuff. But if you want to be a contribution to the world, if you care about the way things are and wanting to make them better, if you see injustice and you want to right it, if you see suffering and you want to help it, if you see poverty and you want to fix it, I mean, those are driven from positive impulses. And that's what drives me. I mean, I right now I'm so focused on the food system because after 30 years of practice, it's really clear to me that most of the things I see in my office are the result of people eating the wrong thing and not eating the right things. And that's true. And when you look at recent data from the Global Burden of Disease Study, 11 million people, and I think this is an underestimate, 11 million people die every year from eating the wrong food, bad food, processed food, and not eating enough of the right food, whole foods, fruits, and vegetables. That is a lot of people. It's more than smoking, wars, violence. It's the biggest single killer in the world, and yet nobody's talking about it. People are talking about Ebola and Zika and malaria and TB. Those are all important things to address. But it's a fraction of what's really driving the suffering on the planet. I mean, there's over 2 billion people who are overweight in the world now.
And why? Is that because our minds are focused on treating, not preventing?
Well, no. It's focused on the fact that we have Well, yes. I mean, it's focused on the wrong model of medicine to help the problems we have, which is not dealing with root causes. Although we try, we often don't really treat people based on the emerging science, right? So that's one thing, and I'll come back to that. And the second thing is, our food environment is so toxic that it's very hard to do the right thing. It's easy to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just listen. I was looking at some pictures. I was in I think it was at a restaurant or something. There was a big picture of Woodstock on the wall, and there was like not anybody overweight.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of I went to see this Aretha Franklin movie, and I think it was called Amazing Grace or something, and it was this big African American crowd in Oakland in the early 70s.
Yeah.
There were overweight people there. Now 80% of African American women are overweight.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just in a generation.
Yeah.
Since I've been alive.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. And gosh, it just feels, I mean, I'm sure I'm obviously preaching to the choir here, but it feels, the question that I want to ask is, how does this happen? Is it driven by money and by fast food?
It's complicated. It's complicated. The food system is both the result of intended and unintended consequences.
Yeah.
When we started the industrial agriculture revolution after World War II, and we used the fertilizer that came from bomb-making factories, the nitrogen that used to make bombs is now fertilizer, the biological weapons, the nerve gases, those are pesticides, okay? We started using that. We thought we could increase yields, we could increase food production, we could feed the world. The Green Revolution was this great noble idea that we could engineer foods to be, more productive and to be more resistant to disease and so forth. Then we developed GMO. I don't think anybody started that going, we're gonna try to destroy the world. We're gonna cause climate change. We're gonna destroy our rivers and lakes. We're gonna lose 90% of the biodiversity on the planet. We're going to lose of our edible vegetables. 50% of our livestock are going to be gone. We're going to kill 75% of our pollinator species. Nobody's
sounds like a war on.
Nobody's thinking that, right?
God.
But it happened, and so now the whole food system is the number one cause of climate change. It's not the energy sector, right?
Yeah.
The energy sector is up there for sure. It's over a third, but half of all climate change comes from the food system. And it's not just factory farming of cows, it's deforestation, it's soil degradation, it's the food waste issue, which is huge. It's the increase in transportation, storage, refrigeration, all those things together make it the biggest problem. And then at the same time, we were sort of all enamored with sort of this new processed food to make life simpler, right?
Yeah.
And the food industry, really, in some ways, very deliberately wanted to hijack our kitchens and make convenience king. And there was a big meeting in the late 50s, early 60s by General Mills in Minnesota with all the big food companies saying, we have to deal with this effort to have home cooking and home ec, and it's a threat. Yeah. And so they created Betty Crocker, who was an imaginary person to compete with Betty, the real home ec advocate, and was going around trying to teach Americans how to cook. And that led to insinuating processed foods into recipes at home, right? Remember Campbell's cream of chicken soup, add it to your casserole, or take a thing of Ritz crackers and sprinkle it on your broccoli with Velveeta cheese, right? It's all this processed stuff. Then we got TV dinners, then we got, astronaut food, and we got, Tang, and we got Fleischmann's margarine, better than butter, and all this stuff was, kind of insinuating itself into the culture. You deserve a break today.
Yeah.
Cooking is drudgery. Get women out of the kitchen. And all this led to having 2% of the meals outside the home to having 50% and maybe more now. Yeah. And having then the food industry being encouraged by the government with really bad advice, which was to cut fat and eat carbs, right?
How does that happen? That's one of the most
how did that happen?
insane false information, and I'm sure it was done with good intention.
Yeah,
right?
it was. Nobody was like, we're going to set out to make America fat and diabetic and kill everybody and have 2 billion people obese in the world. No, that didn't happen. But there was a real hunger to understand what caused heart disease.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Ansel Keys in the 50s who did a study looking at a number of countries based on their diet and their risk of heart disease. Yeah. And he concluded by looking at these countries and their diet that there was an increased risk with fat and saturated fat. And his name was Ansel Keys. Now, he went and did a follow-up study called the 7-Country Study, but there was data on 22 countries at that time in Europe.
Yeah.
He only picked 7. He left out countries like Spain and France, which had high fat consumption, but low heart disease risk.
Do you think he left it out because it didn't match what he wanted?
It didn't fit.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this in my book, Eat Fat, Get Thin. And I analyzed all the data and all the different competing things. But he was such a charismatic guy. He was so good at arguing his point.
Yeah, yeah.
And these studies cannot prove anything by definition. They're called population studies, where they follow a population, they see what they eat, they see if there's a correlation.
Yeah.
It's not causation.
Yeah.
In other words, I wake up every morning, the sun comes up 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I didn't cause the sun to come up,
Yeah.
but if I did a study, I would find that yes,
Yep. Yep.
it's because I wake up, the sun comes up. This is nonsense, right?
Yeah.
If I did a study of women over 55 who had sex, I would conclude that sex never leads to pregnancy.
Yeah.
100% accurate, not valid in any way.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. He made an association. When you look at the data, it was actually the sugar that was far worse in that data. Yeah. So then that led to him and others doing further studies, and they actually couldn't prove it, but there was no randomized controlled trials that showed that fat was bad when the American government decided to make these guidelines. And they were influenced by this guy, Mark Hegstead, who was a scientist at Harvard, who was working with Ansel Keys, and they were all on this fat hypothesis. And then on top of that, the sugar industry hired him, this guy, Mark Hegstead, who advised McGovern on the dietary guidelines, advised the sugar industry hired him and the head of Harvard Nutrition School, the Harvard Nutrition Program, Fred Stair, to write an editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine, a review of sugar and fat, paid for by the sugar industry that exonerated sugar and implicated fat and heart disease, even though there was a lot of data that sugar was a problem back then. So the government's a bunch of politicians, they don't know about science, so they're getting this advice. So they created the dietary guidelines for Americans. And then they created the food pyramid, which said what? Eat 6 to 11 servings of bread, rice, and pasta a day. 11 servings of bread a day. And fat and oil sparingly. It needs to be flipped on its head.
It's literally flipped on its head, right?
Mm-hmm. And, I actually, if I eat too much fat, I get too skinny.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to eat more carbs to actually gain weight.
So it's the perfect combination, it sounds like, of, money, there's some greed in there, good marketing, people just chasing the next thing. Like, it feels like it's like the perfect storm led us to this crazy, terrible place.
Yeah, and then these companies start making huge profits, and it's hard for them to shift, Coca-Cola, what are they going to do? They make Coca-Cola. It's like sugar water, and it's killing people, and it's hard to shift. Pepsi's trying to shift. They get in trouble. Nestle, everybody's trying to shift, but these are super tankers who have legacy products that they either have to improve or get rid of, which, make billions and billions of dollars a year. I mean, the food industry is the single biggest industry in the world. It's $15 trillion, and it's headed up by about 2 or 3 dozen CEOs and companies that control everything. Everything's been consolidated. Even all your healthy, natural food brands are all owned by big food now.
It's just a shame that obviously I know this is a whole different rabbit hole and I know why it's not possible, but a shame that as we learn more, there's not new regulations put in place. Like the fact that we know everything we know, but you can still go order a supersized Coke and that's what's advertised.
Well, then there's that.
And, you know what I mean?
Then there's billions of dollars spent by the food industry lobbying the government to get policies that serve their interests. So the Farm Bill alone has $500 million spent on it by lobbyists to control what's in it, which controls all of our food programs. Why is it that we spend $75 billion a year on food stamps or SNAP, that 75% of that goes to junk food and 10% or $7 billion goes to soda? We spend $7 billion a year on soda for the poor. That's 31 billion servings, making Coca-Cola the biggest welfare recipient in the world. 20% of their American revenue comes from food stamps.
How do you not get disheartened by this? Well, you just laid out. I'm like, shit. Like,
I'm actually optimistic. You know why? Because I think people are becoming aware. People are understanding that we have a problem with our food and our food system. There's food is medicine caucuses in Congress and working with politicians who are getting this. They're starting to talk about it even in the presidential election, talking about regenerative agriculture and shifting the way we grow food. The UN is saying this. Major groups all around the world are bringing these issues to light. And I think there is an awareness that, our food is killing us and it's killing the environment. The way we grow food and food agriculture and big food are really the problem. And we need to help make them the solution.
Yeah, it just feels so evil. And I know that it's not driven strictly by greed and evil, but it just feels, when you look at it,
there's some of it that is. I mean, there surely is some of it, right? So if it's a passive thing, this is their product line. They're trying to maximize their profits like every other company, one thing. But when the American Beverage Association, which it represents, all the soda companies and, soft drink companies and sugar drink companies, when they start to freak out about soda taxes in California, because they lost in a few states, and they spent $30 million to fight soda taxes, while Bloomberg and the Arnold Foundation spent $20 million to oppose them.
Yeah.
So, to fight for the soda taxes. If they passed.
Yeah. Was that recently or?
That was in 2016.
Got it.
Right? So the soda industry spent $30 million. Two big philanthropists spent $20 million. They won.
Yeah.
But then the food industry got really smart. They followed Big Tobacco's playbook, which is to create preemptive laws. So they went and created a ballot measure in California that would prohibit local governments from raising taxes unless there was a 2/3 majority vote. This would literally have crippled local governments from raising money for fire departments or schools or the police department.
Yeah.
And it would have crippled the government. The food industry doesn't give a damn about that. What they did was then they spent $7 billion promoting this. Then they went to Governor Brown, who's the most liberal governor in the history of the planet, right? Governor Moonbeam, right? They went to him and they go like, okay, guys, if you don't pass this law that we want called a preemptive law, meaning you're going to ban any future taxes on soda or junk food in California. If you don't pass this law, we're going to pass this ballot measure, which is going to cripple the state. And guess what? 5 days behind closed doors, Jerry Brown caved because he couldn't do anything about it, and the food industry won. This is not, oh, by the way, we just got stuck with these legacy products. This is a deliberate, malicious attempt to interfere with the interests of public health that are being put forth by local and state governments for soda taxes.
Yeah.
And
Gosh,
they work. That's why they fight them.
That's why I always try to look at well, no, I mean, people are just looking for the next,
Look, here's why I'm optimistic.
Yep.
Remember slavery?
Yep.
Okay. Slavery was the foundation of our agricultural system. It was the foundation of our economy. It was the way in which agriculture and our food was produced.
Yep.
And abolition happened. Slavery ended. The entire economic system of our agriculture shifted almost overnight.
Yeah.
Now, there's still issues from that, but think about the magnitude of that change.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah,
if people rise up and go, enough, hopefully we won't have to have a civil war to fix it. But
it looks looks like it might be coming.
I mean, young people have to deal with this. I mean, according to the UN, we have 60 harvests left of soil. Our soil is being degraded. We lose, for every pound of corn we grow, we lose a pound of soil. We lose 200,000 pounds of soil. 300,000 tons of soil every hour. God. Without soil, we can't grow food. No soil, no food, no humans. 60 harvests is what the UN says we have left.
Does
Forget
that mean
about climate
60
change.
years?
60 years.
Yeah.
Forget about climate change. And by the way, soil is the biggest solution for climate change. It can hold more carbon than all the rainforests and all the greenery on the planet. Yeah. Because it sucks it out through the grasses. So grasslands and regenerative ag, which is basically growing animals in a way that mimics natural herds movements, which helps to dig up the soil and pee and poo on it, and then they eat a little bit way down. They don't graze right to the stubble.
Yeah.
That actually stimulates the soil to become full of organic matter, to hold water, to suck out carbon from the environment. It's literally the biggest carbon sink on the planet.
It just feels like we're at this weird game of chicken. And it's like you can see these clocks ticking on multiple things. And then you see how hard people go for profit and for stuff like that. And it's like, who's going to win that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think, look, I believe it or not, I'm working on the Republican now who is excited about this, gets this, and wants to create a whole campaign and movement to change policy. So people are getting this.
Yeah.
People are getting this. We all live on the same planet, whether we're white, black, Jewish, Muslim, Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. Yeah. We're all humans first. We all share this planet. We all have to eat food. Nobody wants to be sick, whether you're any of these things. So I think it's a unifying thing. Yeah. I mean, nobody's for obesity. Yeah. Nobody's for food waste. Nobody's for climate destruction.
Just the CEOs. They love the obesity, right?
Who?
The CEOs. The CEOs of these big companies, they're the ones
No, I
for
don't
it.
think they do. I don't think they are. I think they're genuinely struggling with trying to figure out what to do because, it's like there are certain things that are dinosaurs. Where are the horse and buggy manufacturers? Who's making 8-track tapes anymore?
I know. Blu-ray didn't last very long.
Yeah, Blu-ray. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, I was so mad when Steve Jobs took out my CD player in my computer, and then I'm like, oh, needs that?
You can't even get a headphone jack anymore. Can I ask you something that's
I
a
still
little
have a
bit?
headphone jack in my computer.
Well, your computer, phones, they're gone.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something a little bit out of this, but kind of? And
Sorry,
then
I get carried away.
No, I love
you
it.
set me off, and I'm like, because the people, it really is up to the next generation, to the young people of the world, to stand up and go, I'm not going to take it anymore. Like Greta Thunberg, who basically said, enough. Like, how dare you do this to us? You're stealing our future.
What about your advice on I know one of the biggest problems is everyone, a lot of these people are outraged. Naturally, they take it to social media. A lot of times they don't go any further.
Yeah.
Like, what would your advice be on just bare minimum, you can do this and where the action could actually pay off?
Great question. So I'm just finishing a book. It's called Food Fix.
Yep.
How to save our health, our economy, our communities, and our planet one bite at a time. And it outlines these issues, but it also has fixes. What are the actions that can be done by individuals, by businesses, by governments, right? By philanthropists, nonprofits to solve this problem. And I'm telling you, it's happening. And there's a lot you can do. Yeah. I mean, as an individual, you can focus on what you eat and make sure you're as best as you can eating in a way that helps restore climate back to normal, helps actually protect the environment by eating organic, by eating regenerative foods, by dealing with food waste. I mean, food waste is if it were a country, would be the third biggest emitter of greenhouse gases after the U.S. and China. We waste 40% of our food. So compost, right? I mean, I was at Whole Foods in Union Square yesterday getting some stuff in New York, and I was so glad when I came out of the store, they had a compost bucket. And they had a garbage recycling bin and they had a regular trash bin. But, when you put all the food waste in landfills, it off-gasses methane, and it's a huge contributor to climate change, as well as, and actually ending food waste is the third biggest solution to climate change, believe it or not.
That's wild, because I feel like you don't hear it. It's not, the way at least I hear it, it's not weighted that way. It's all like coal and factories.
No, it's not. I mean, yes, we need to deal with all that. But if we stopped tomorrow, every single carbon emission from fossil fuels and energy, we'd still be screwed.
Yeah,
right?
That's wild.
Because we are facing 50% of those climate change things happening from agriculture, and the beautiful thing is, renewables can help solve the energy issue, but regenerative ag can help solve the climate issue, right? Yeah. Because it can draw down carbon, and if done at scale, and it can fix the problem. And then you deal with food waste on top of that. It's a beautiful solution, because if people are wanting and asking for the right foods, it's going to be made. Yeah. The government policy support it being made, it'll be made. If people do that, it helps climate change. It ends obesity. So it produces food that's good for you, good for the planet.
Yeah, that's huge. So my question that was a little left field was, how do you feel about the whole vaping thing? And the reason I ask is only because it ties in slightly to intake and stuff like that. But the one thing that I thought was interesting, and this is why I thought of it, is we were talking about how hard it is to ban stuff and blah, blah, blah. That seems to be getting banned quickly. It seemed like it came out, it was all the rage, everyone was doing it. Oh my God, 8 people have died, ban it, ban it, ban it. And all we hear about is these attacks on it and the fact that it looks like it's going to take a pretty big hit or get banned. Whereas we have these other way bigger problems that you can't possibly get through to. Does that make sense from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, single targets are easy, right? Tobacco, vaping, right? They're easy, but food is hard because, what food? Is it your croissant at Starbucks in the morning? Or is it your Coca-Cola? Or is it,
It's those damn supersized Cokes, right? We can get rid of plastic straws. Let's get rid of...
I mean, it's so much different diversity of food. There's literally 600,000 different food products out on the market that are processed. So which ones do you tax them all? How do you figure it out? So that's more challenging. Although countries are doing it. They're taxing junk food. They're taxing They're ending food marketing. Chile has done an amazing job. So they really are able to do that.
Yeah.
With vaping, I think, one, it sort of reminds me of artificial sweeteners, right? Because it's like, oh, here's a cheat.
Yeah.
A way around tobacco and addiction, right?
Yeah.
It's still highly addictive. Artificial sweeteners actually are clearly linked to obesity and diabetes, and maybe even worse than regular sugar in studies. It destroys your microbiome, which affects all sorts of metabolic issues in your health. So there's no easy out. The vaping, I think, the ones that I looked at, the cases that I looked at, were really from aftermarket, third-party kind of weird stuff that wasn't kosher.
Yeah.
So I think it's being sort of unfairly stigmatized.
Yeah.
However, even regular vaping causes kind of pneumonitis, which is an inflammation in the lungs, even if it's not the weird stuff. So people who are pulmonologists, experts, ICU doctors who I've talked to say they were seeing a lot of these cases of kids who are coming and just vaping all the time with severe lung inflammation. So there's no free ride.
Yeah, either way, it's not good.
I mean, if you want to have a few hits on a weekend, whatever, okay?
Yeah.
But like if you're sucking back on that thing all day, every day, because you think it's okay, it's not.
Yeah. And then the other big press item that I want to ask you about is Impossible Burger, Beyond. Is this the savior? Is this
plant-based
the
meat?
option?
Sounds so good, doesn't it?
Does,
Plant-based meat. It's going to
sounds
save
great.
the world, save the animals, save
no
you.
more cows. Yeah.
Here's what I think. We need to eat real food.
Yeah.
We need to eat real food. I mean, these are highly processed food with dozens of ingredients. The Impossible Burger has sort of an interesting story. Initially, it was not allowed to be called safe by the FDA.
Wow.
And they had basically a genetically engineered yeast that produced heme, which makes it bleed, the fake bleeding, and has 47 novel proteins in it. And they went instead to the FDA, they went to an independent group of scientists, quote unquote, that turned out all to work for Monsanto. Now they've shifted their product to be GMO soy. So let's just break that down a minute. First of all, glyphosate is the most abundantly used chemical in agriculture around the world, period. It's been linked to cancer, to epigenetic changes generationally. Your grandmother eats it, and even if you're never exposed to it, you're going to get health issues from it.
Yep.
It destroys your microbiome. It affects your detoxification. It's been linked to cancer. I think the story is just beginning on that. There's been billions of dollars of settlements against lawsuits against, judgments against glyphosate in the courts. I mean, there's 14,000 similar cases. So it's not safe.
Yeah.
Second, when you grow soybeans in mass monocrop fields, you are doing a whole bunch of damage to the environment. One, you're obviously destroying all the animals that live there, right? So people think being a vegetarian or vegan is good for animals. Well, when you think about it, what are you destroying? You're destroying the habitat of rabbits and mice and moles and gophers and birds, and so you're creating a lot of destruction.
Yeah.
Second, the fertilizers, the pesticides, the herbicides are destroying the biodiversity in the soil on which everything depends. They kill all the pollinator species. They grow food in a way that requires intensive use of these fossil fuel-based fertilizers, which contributes to climate change. Yeah. And then on top of that, you're destroying the soil, so you're losing all the carbon in the soil, so the plants are less nutrient dense, and you're actually not able to hold the carbon from the environment. And when an independent company, a life cycle analysis company called Qantas from Australia, did an analysis of GMO soy Impossible Burger, comparing it to a regeneratively raised beef burger.
Yeah.
They found, yes, it was far better than feedlot burger, for sure.
Yeah.
But nobody should be eating that.
Yeah.
But it was not better than a regeneratively raised grass-fed burger. And what was fascinating was it in the GMO soy Impossible Burger contributed 3.5 kilos of carbon for every burger you eat to the environment.
What's a
3.5 kilos of carbon, which is
what's a regular burger?
A regular burger is a lot more. It's probably like 50 or whatever.
Okay.
The regeneratively raised grass-fed burger reduced carbon in the environment
That's
by
what I was
3.5 kilos. So you'd have to eat one actual regeneratively raised beef burger to offset the carbon emissions of one Impossible Burger.
Can you, just for dummies, clarify, and I'm one of the dummies, what's regeneratively, what's that?
So this is a new thing. People hear organic, they hear grass-fed, they know what that is.
Yep.
you can have grass-fed cattle that's raised on a ranch where it destroys the land through overgrazing, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Regeneratively raised strategies are incorporating animals into the ecosystem of a farm.
Yeah.
And this is what the UN says we could do, the IPCC, which is the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, says we should do. But essentially it mimics, as I said before, mimics the way natural herds moved historically. So, for example, we had 60 million bison and 10 million elk and who knows, lots of other ruminants running around, antelopes. That's more than all the cows that we raise today in factory farms, right?
Yeah.
They weren't causing climate change.
Yeah.
They weren't destroying the soil. They built the soil. That's how we got 50 feet of topsoil in some areas of America, because they moved in tight herds because they don't want to be eaten, right? So they're all stick together.
Yeah.
They don't stay anywhere for a long time. They constantly move, and they probably eat down 50% of the grass. They dig it up with their hoofs.
Yeah.
They pee, they poo, which fertilizes it, and it builds soil. So there's a guy named Gabe Brown in North Dakota who was a traditional farmer, and his farm was destroyed by drought, by hail, by floods. He just was terrible. And he's like, I need to do something. I'm going to have to go out of business. So he started studying, and he found out this field of regenerative agriculture, started doing it. And now he's built 27 inches of topsoil on his farm.
From that.
And it takes 1,000 years to build 3 inches usually naturally, right?
Yeah.
So when you use this method, you're building all this soil.
Yeah.
1% organic matter can hold 27,000 gallons of water per acre, and you can build 6, 7, 8, 10% organic matter using this method to literally stop floods and droughts. He makes more money. He produces better food. Yeah. He uses less inputs. He jokes, he says he makes his own fertilizer with the animals and the plants he's growing.
And that we can still feed the same amount of people doing it.
Yeah, some people say, oh, you can't scale it. You can't feed the world with that. That's just not true when you look at the data. Alan Williams, who's this regenerative farmer at White Oaks, I think it's in Missouri, did analysis. If we took all the 40% of the Earth's surface is grasslands. You can't grow crops on it. You just can't, right? So if you take all of it and you manage it properly, if you take the Bureau of Land Management lands that are poorly managed, if you take some of the land that we're using for soy and corn to grow crops for animals, and if you do all that, we could literally produce more cows today here in America than we could using the factory farming method.
Wow.
So yeah, there's people who argue back and forth, but the problem is when ideology starts getting in the mix. When people say, "Oh, being a vegan is the only way to go." People can be vegan. I mean, in my cookbook is called "Food. What the Heck Should I Cook?" and hysterical because I these diet wars drive me crazy. And I jokingly created this concept called the Pegan diet, which is paleo vegan. It's kind of a joke, just making fun of all the diet wars and saying, let's just find out what are the common principles we know that are healthy eating. And they're good for most people. And I looked on Amazon. My book was #1 in paleo, #1 in vegan, #1 in vegetarian, #1 in low fat, #1 diabetic, #1 in nutrition. I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to do, which was perfect.
Level the
right. But if you focus on ideology, it just becomes not scientific, and that's a challenge. Whether people believe the Earth is flat, people believe,
of course,
the climate isn't real, climate change is not man-made, or that it's just weather. I mean, I literally had a podcast where I had this guy wrote a book about climate change, and one of the comments was, Dr. Hyman, it's called weather. I'm like, okay.
I mean, the stuff that goes on in those comments is...
But it's tough because, there's just people are not getting clear information. And what's even more frightening than, and I think young people know about this, but what's more frightening is everything's being tracked, right? Every click you make on your phone, every website you go to, everything you like or don't like, that's all being tracked. Where you shop, your GPS is on, tracking you at all times. I met with this guy recently who was a Republican strategist. He said, when you go to a Trump rally, they have a way of pinging everybody's phone, knowing who you are, and then they can target you.
That's scary.
Right? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. People should watch The Great Hack. You asked,
I did.
what documentaries I like. The Great Hack is terrifying.
Yes.
The Biggest Little Farm is also great. It's about regenerative ag. But the Great Hack is essentially about how their big tech is collecting billions of data points on us. And you can turn off on your phone. Apple listens to everything. If you go to privacy settings on your settings, and you can look at privacy, and then you can look at the bottom, it says analytics. It's on share iPhone and watch analytics data, share iCloud analytics. They're getting all this data, and then they're selling it. And then you can see all the advertising.
Yep.
So, limit ad tracking. It's, I put it on, so I don't want people tracking. So you can see all the sites that attract you, and it's Facebook, Google, and they're selling all this stuff to third parties that are using it to manipulate us.
Yeah.
So then they're using it to target our fear-based marketing. And they're actually the Russians, but it's not just the Russians.
Yeah.
It's happening at massive scale. So you know how you get on your phone, you're like, how do they know I was just thinking about buying this and that?
Yeah.
They know you better than you know you.
Absolutely.
They have 3 billion data points, and they're using it. One thing, they use it to market, to buy, new shoes or whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But they're using it to influence political systems, behavior, your opinions about things.
Yeah.
And they are able to activate people to rallies or activate people to vote.
Yeah. That's why I think that what you're doing is so important, and people doing the type of work that you're doing is so important, because it feels to me, not to sound like, conspiracy guy, but I don't think this is that wild, is like, these people have become so good at encouraging your worst instincts.
Yes.
So whether it be food, maybe you just clicked on that thing, or maybe you cheated and got a burger today, or whatever, they know how to take advantage of your worst instincts. No one's doing that work to remind you to eat a salad, right? And then same thing with social media, right? Like,
broccoli
so you're getting
lobby is really big. You should
huge,
watch out for
right? I
them.
get broccoli ads all the time on my Instagram. But so now you're on your Instagram, you're eating crappy food, and those people are doing the absolute best to make sure that you do more of it. And it just seems like, more so than ever in human history, our own sort of willpower.
Yeah, our free will is
so
being eroded.
important.
Well,
right?
our free will is being eroded because we think we're making decisions that are our decisions, but we're being manipulated in ways that we don't even know. So I encourage everybody to be aware of that, and to learn how to deal with that. And whether it's Facebook, Google, there's all these ways you can go in and change the settings so you're not tracked.
Yeah.
But it's still tough. I mean, if you use Gmail, they know everything in every email. I mean, when you write, hey, I went and, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you have an ad for blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And it's
They came out the other day and said that Siri employees at Apple would frequently hear people doing drug deals and having sex, and it's just a normal thing. And they just, don't listen to it apparently. But they have access to everything. I mean, have you ever had the thing where you swear to God you just said something and you get an ad for it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's wild.
But the iPhone listens.
Yeah.
All the time, and they sell that data to Facebook and Google,
and your Alexa and your Google Home.
But it's even not just that. You have so many data points. Like there's 3 billion data points that these companies have on each one of us.
Yeah.
And then they're selling it to third parties, and they're using it against us, and they know you better than you know you.
Yeah, it's wild.
So I think between that and the food system, we have to sort of become aware of what's really going on.
Yeah.
And I think the food system, it's just a monster that got out of control, and it needs to be actually driven through grassroots awareness. I mean, think of the things that happened: civil rights, women's rights, gay marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, these things were just not happening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you still can't
we
walk
made
alone in
big
the street in the Middle East if you're a woman, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. We are able to achieve those things in this country, and I think our democracy is being attacked, it's being usurped. And people feel apathetic, but there is a lot you can do, and you can become an activist. I mean, I think, look at what this 16-year-old girl did. She just did not she just stood up and said something. You look at what's happening now, and there's resources out there like the Food Policy Action Network. You can go online, Food Policy Action Network, and it'll give you a list of every congressman and senator and their votes on all food and ag systems.
Yeah, that's good.
So you can see this guy's voting for Monsanto, and and then you can say, and they what they did was they launched a social media campaign against 2 really nefarious congressmen, and they got them out of office.
Wow.
So we have the power. Let me tell you, we have the power. We're just not using it.
Yeah,
right,
big time. Okay, so let me ask you this: switching gears a little bit.
Sorry, I get kind of
No, I love
excited.
You're literally, this is a dream guest because I just get to sort of lead you somewhere and you give me all the facts.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great. What's the majority, if this is even answerable, of the people that come to see you, let's say in Cleveland, is it people that have tried a lot of other things? They have these autoimmune diseases, stuff like that, and they're like, nothing works. Help me. Is it
pretty much? I joke and call myself a resort doctor because I used to work at a health resort. The doctor of last resort.
Yeah, that's good.
And we see people who've struggled, seen everybody, done everything, and who can't get better. And I mean, if it's easy stuff, often you'll get better. Time is the best doctor and healer, but for some people, it just doesn't work. And so you need to find out what's really going on. I saw this woman the other day. She had vestibular migraines. She was in bed. She couldn't, vomiting all the time, spinning around, migraines, terrible. And she had a whole host of other issues, gut issues, mood issues, anxiety, panic attack. It was just, her system was a mess.
Yeah.
She'd seen 45 doctors. 45 doctors. She was better in 6 weeks. Less even.
What do you do? You do a blood test? How do you start?
I talk to them.
And you say, what the hell are
I
you
spend
eating?
an hour or more taking a detailed history about everything.
Yeah.
And often asking questions that their traditional doctors are not trained to ask about. Environmental toxic exposure, mold exposure, heavy metal exposure, their gut history, their gut health. I want to know if they had C-section, antibiotics, breastfed. All these things are pieces of data that are really critical to find out. And usually by hearing that story, it's like being a medical detective. I can figure out pretty closely what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just with this woman the other night, and she's like, my thyroid is crazy, and I have, I had to have my thyroid taken out, and I can't sleep for years. And I'm like, and then I'm thirsty all night, and I drink so much, and I don't know what's going on. I'm thirsty all the time. Yeah. I'm like, oh. I said, do you have mold exposure? She goes, oh my God, yes. When I was a kid, I lived in a completely mold-infested place. I'm like, yeah. When that clue is that mold toxins impair your brain's ability to regulate hormones like ADH, which controls how much thirst you have or how much you're peeing, right?
Yeah.
So that wasn't working. So she was thirsty all the time and peeing all the time. And I mean, those clues are things that typical doctors don't know, because when you think of the body as a system, you begin to understand how everything works together, how everything is connected.
Yeah. Okay, then let me ask you this. I'm a big fan of, like I said, I did the podcast with Dr. Hyman, and then I went and did the brain scan with him, and I did the whole thing.
Any holes in your brain?
No, but I had a really bad left temporal lobe injury from skateboarding when I was 18, and you could see a little bit of it still remaining. Yeah. And so now I'm on heavy fish oil and doing hyperbaric chamber, and I'm going to go back for a follow-up in a few months, but I'm excited to see the progress. Great. But luckily, no holes. My question is, for people out there who are like, maybe they're not super sick or don't have these symptoms, but they just want to get their stuff dialed, what do you do? Like, how does the normal person just...
So I work with everybody from people who, come in wheelchairs to elite athletes, number one in football, number one in tennis, number one in, soccer, the Real Madrid team. I work with, corporate athletes. In other words, people who are business athletes who want to optimize their performance. I was at the CIA recently giving a talk to how do we optimize our workforce at the CIA. And it's all the same. It's like, how do you create a healthy human? That's what functional medicine is. Whether you're sick or well, how do you optimize function? That's why they call it functional medicine, right? And it starts with the foundational lifestyle things, right? Whole foods, low glycemic, lots of good fats, no processed food, just what I write about in my books. Second is, obviously exercise, sleep, stress reduction, community, relationships, all those things are foundational. And then you got to fine tune things. So then you can figure out, okay, well, this person has these nutritional needs, they're not being met. So I just talked to someone who's super depressed, and it's like her vitamin D is almost non-existent. Her iron levels are super low. That all can cause depression. So I begin to sort of optimize all the numbers. You optimize nutrition, you get rid of toxins, you optimize the gut health. So our microbiome plays a role in almost everything in our body, but who teaches you how to have a healthy inner garden? Nobody. So how do you do it? What do you eat? What do you not eat? What do you take? Like, how do you do that? So it's optimizing hormones and optimizing brain chemistry, optimizing immune system, optimizing gut, optimizing your energy systems, optimizing your nutritional status. All those things are what we do in functional medicine.
So how do I do that if I'm sitting in Mississippi listening to this podcast right now and I'm like, all right, I need to change. What do I do?
Hey, Mississippi.
Shout out to Mississippi.
Well, that is a problem because Mississippi is a food wasteland. But you can do it. You can order stuff online. You can find places. I worked with it wasn't Mississippi, but it was a really poor area in South Carolina. It was one of the worst food deserts in America, with a family lived in a trailer and disability and food stamps. I taught them how to cook one meal from Whole Foods they'd never cooked in their life. They never ate a real food in their life. Canned string beans, iceberg lettuce, that was about it. And within a year, they lost couple of 100 pounds as a family. The kid lost 138 pounds, ended up going to medical school. He was 20. He was 16 years old when I saw him. It was 50% body fat. And it's really about deciding you want to break away from the system.
Yep.
And I've written many books. One of them is called the 10 Day Detox Diet.
Yep.
That is a great reset. 10 days, clean up your diet, clean up your life, see what happens.
Yep.
Many problems will go away. Digestive issues, joint issues, headaches, insomnia, energy issues, muscle aches, brain fog, all that stuff can clear up. So start with diet and take a multivitamin, fish oil, vitamin D.
Yep.
That'll take care of 80% of everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what
And by the way, at my website, drhyman.com, I've got tons of resources. A lot of them are free.
Yeah.
You can check it out and a lot of information.
That's so awesome. What the other thing that you kind of touched on that I just wanted to get clarity on, because I don't know, is all of these different frickin' diets and lifestyles. And I remember when that documentary, What the Health, came out, everyone was a vegan. Literally everyone in the office. I think Tyler was a vegan. Everyone was a vegan for a week, right? But is that...
Now there's Game Changers, which is even...
What's that? That's another documentary?
Yeah, it's a much better documentary. I mean, What the Health was goofy and farcical and completely filled with nonsense and misinformation.
Yeah.
Like, it's not sugar that's killing us, it's fat. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
And I think I think I watched it and I was horrified by I mean, they call up the receptionist at the American Cancer Society and they're like, why don't you have this on your website? I'm like, it's a receptionist. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but it worked. And everyone was like, everyone's vegan. Then everyone was paleo. Then everyone was...
Right. Which is why I wrote the book, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? And now the cookbook, Food, What Should I Cook? And I think when we break it down, you look at paleo and vegan, almost everything they say is the same, right? Except for where you get your protein. Animal products or beans and grains. They all agree we should be eating tons of veggies. They all agree we shouldn't be eating a lot of sugar and starch. They all agree we shouldn't be having processed food. They all agree that we should be eating a lot of nuts and seeds, that we should be eating whole foods, that we should be not eating dairy, a lot of dairy. I mean, they agree on almost everything, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
And so what I said is, okay, if you're going to look at what does the science say, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. We should be eating whole foods. We shouldn't eat processed foods. We should eat a ton of veggies and fruits. Yeah. We should have whole grains and meats, not whole grain flours, but whole grains. And I would recommend avoiding gluten not because gluten's a problem for everybody, but the only way we eat gluten in this country is flour.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you're having wheat berries in your salad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And flour is worse than sugar for your body. We eat 133 pounds of flour. Yeah. And it's full of glyphosate. It's full of calcium propionate, which causes behavioral issues and cognitive issues. It's super starchy and has extra gliadin proteins, which makes it more inflammatory. Yeah. So I think, things like whole grains, brown rice, black rice, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, all those things are great. Yeah. I think beans are fine, for people. If you're diabetic, if you're overweight, if you're have an autoimmune disease, digestive issues, grains and beans can be a problem for you. Yeah. Dairy, I think we shouldn't be eating most modern cow dairy. We can have sheep and goat if we're not sensitive. It's a much better product, less inflammatory. But we should be eating a lot of healthy fats, right? There are a few still holdouts on the low-fat bandwagon, but that's been so disproven. Even the government has gotten off that and said no restriction on dietary fat in the last guidelines.
What about red meat?
So red meat. Meat, according to, the common view was that it was bad for you and bad for the environment and catastrophic climate change. Yeah. And it's going to kill you and give you cancer. And certainly if you watch any of the vegan movies, you'll think that's true. Yeah. So on that, factory farming of animals should be banned from the planet. It is inhumane for the animals. It produces enormous amounts of environmental damage, not just climate change. And the meat isn't that great anyway for the body and not great for humans. Yeah. However, when you take in regenerative ag, it's a whole different story, right? As I said, you can actually cause less environmental destruction than eating a soy burger by eating a grass-fed, regeneratively raised animal because it restores ecosystems. It reduces the use of pesticides, chemicals, and fertilizers. It draws down carbon. It protects our water systems. People say, it takes 1,800 gallons of water to produce a pound of beef. Yeah, if you are irrigating fields with blue water, which is essentially from rivers, lakes, aquifers, which is limited, versus the grass-fed beef, which is eating grass, which is fed by rainwater, right? Green water, right? Yeah. So it's like people kind of spin it any way they want, but when you look at the facts, it's pretty clear that I think it's not a big, huge environmental issue if it's done right.
How do I make sure I get...
And the latest study came out And I'll explain to you why it's confusing.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Because I'm like, I'm like, look, I want to live to be 120 at least. So
yeah, I'd like to too.
I don't want to eat meat if it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm a doctor. I'm a smart guy. I'm going to go figure it out because I'm tired of like this whiplash. And so I basically pulled every scientific paper I could find that was, well done on meat. I read them all, locked myself away for a week in a hotel room. And I came to the conclusion that, it's not the cow, it's the how.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Which is not the cow, it's the how.
Yeah.
And that from an environmental perspective, that's true. From a health perspective, most of the studies that were done were these population studies that don't prove cause and effect. So when you look at the data, the people who were eating meat at the time of these studies was when meat was considered bad.
Yeah.
And we were told to not eat meat. And we listened. We cut our meat consumption dramatically in this country.
Yeah.
And the people who were eating the meat didn't care about their health. They smoked more, they drank more, they ate more, they weighed more,
Yeah.
they didn't exercise, they didn't take their vitamins and minerals, they ate more sugar and processed food. Of course they had more disease, right? And when you look at vegetarians and meat eaters who shopped in health food stores, both of their risk of death was reduced in half.
Yeah.
And so these latest huge series of analyses that were published in the Annals of Internal Medicine said, look, there is a signal, right? There's like a 10, 20, 30% increase in risk, but the data is so poor quality, we can't make decisions from it.
Yeah.
Meaning you can't prove cause and effect for smoking, which we found through population studies causes lung cancer, was a 20-to-1 increased risk, not a 0.1 or a 0.3.
And what is meat?
Meat's a 0.3 or a 0.2.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, it's like, it's noise.
Yeah.
It's not definitive.
Yeah.
And there's so many conflicting, confounding factors, and you can't draw a definitive conclusion. And if there was a huge signal, you probably see it, right?
Yeah.
So like smoking, it's like, smoking causes lung cancer. Nobody doubts that.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at also the meat, it's not the meat, it's what you eat with the meat, right? If you're eating burgers and fries and milkshakes and Coca-Cola, meat's going to show up as bad for you because, it's on the list of everything else. But
Gosh, how do I make sure that because I eat a lot of steak, how do I make sure I eat regeneratively, grass-fed?
Well, there's hard to find, right? And then in my book, I explain where you can find it. Okay. But there is a place called Thrive Market, which is an online grocery store like Whole Foods meets Costco meets Amazon kind of thing.
Yep.
And they sell regeneratively raised beef. You can get it on there and it's frozen. There are places where you can go and buy like from direct from the farmers and they have online services where you can get buy a quarter of a cow or half a cow or buy it with your friends. Yep. And literally for $8 a pound, you can get an average of $8 a pound. You can get regeneratively raised beef, which is less per serving than a McDonald's hamburger.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's 4 ounces.
Yeah.
4 ounces divided by 8 is $2.
Yeah. Jeez. Okay. All right. I got to let you get out of here. I have 2 final questions.
Yes, sir.
If you could I ask everyone this, you could hop in a time machine right now. You could go anywhere in your life and tell yourself anything. Where do you go and what do you say? What do you ask or say?
I think that's a tough one. I think, the things I think about are more personal than professional.
Yeah.
I would have told my 20-year-old self to work with someone to help me figure out how to pick the right partner in life.
Yeah.
And what was going on in my psychology that led me to pick a partner or 2 partners, turned out, that were really destructive in my life and for my children, for my health, for everything.
Yeah.
And so I would really, as a young person, really look at what's driving you. What are your beliefs? What did you experience in your childhood that gave you different ways of seeing the world that may not be constructive or productive?
Yeah.
And, there's different people who can do that. There's a great friend of mine. She's a life coach. It's called the Hendel Group. And
I had her on.
Lauren Zander?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Like my best friend.
She's amazing.
She's my best friend.
Yep.
And she has a program called Inner You, which is a self-guided thing. So if you can't afford a coach, you can do that.
Yeah.
There are really great resources out there, but I think it's important to really take a look at that for yourself because if you don't, it's very tough to
That's
unwind.
a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm glad you said that. That's a really big. Did you have to do work on yourself to figure that out, or
Yes.
did you figure it out over time?
After my second failed marriage, I encountered Lauren Zander,
Oh, there you
and
go.
she helped literally unpack all that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Figure out my beliefs.
I'm going to do
figure
a
out my
session with her.
traits.
I have to fill out all
Figure
the homework and stuff. But
figure
yeah.
out my traits and do some really hard work and soul searching
Yeah.
to do what she called, which is fix my picker.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I
We
think
talked
a lot
about
of
that.
yeah. I mean, I think would I have not gone to China and got mercury poisoning? That probably would have been good. So I didn't have all those years of suffering.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I didn't have all those years of suffering, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
True.
And being able to give service to the world in the way I'm doing it. So
yeah.
like it's hard to say, oh, I wish that hadn't happened because it sucked. But,
Yeah.
but it was a silver lining.
Yeah, you're right. Last one. You can prescribe anything to the entire world for 30 days, and they absolutely have to follow it. So I'm sure you have a million ideas. Is there any one thing that you think could make a huge difference if people just did it for 30 days?
Yeah.
What is it?
I mean, for the world or for themselves?
Well,
I think it would be both.
Right.
Actually. This is
Yeah,
a
I think it's both.
double win.
yes.
Not because I want to promote my book or anything, but
Yeah.
I wrote a book called the 10 Day Detox Diet, which is essentially sugar elimination, detoxifying, healing diet. It's anti-inflammatory. And it's what I've found that works best to deal with chronic illness in all my patients. So if people could have a moment where they realize that all their niggly symptoms or more serious diseases could get better by changing their diet, it would change everything. Most people have what I call feel like crap syndrome, FLC.
Absolutely.
They feel like crap.
Yep.
And within 10 days of really clean eating,
Yeah.
you could revolutionize your way of seeing your health and understand that all these things that you're suffering from are not necessary. The quality of your life goes up. Your ability to be engaged with your family, your friends, the people you love, with work, with yourself goes way up.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know what would happen? If every single person on the planet only ate real food that they cooked themselves,
What would happen?
the food industry would change overnight.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I got to try that. I got to try that 10-day detox. Thank you, man. Listen, I
And they
can't
can do
thank
it for
you
30
enough.
days, 10 days for 30 days.
Yeah, there you go. Just
Do it 30
clean
days is
all
even
the
better.
way out.
All the way out, 30 days.
Listen, thank you so much. There was so much good info packed into this hour. I'm very thankful.
Of course.
Hopefully we can stay in touch, and I appreciate all the info.
Thanks for getting the word out.
Of course, absolutely.
Everybody go to drhyman.com and check out my website. And also, they can listen to my podcast, The Doctor's Pharmacy.
Yes,
It's
please.
everywhere you get your podcasts.
And you're just crushing it.
It
You're
is
a pro
crushing it.
podcaster.
Yeah,
man.
it's doing really well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Guys, if you like that and you want to see more like it, as well as vlogs, other web series, and all the random stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button. You won't regret it, I promise.